Hello, leading teen writers. Welcome to another episode of Grammar. Now, when I say grammar, you're probably like, ew, why? But remember, the better grammar we have, the more complex things we can do with our writing. And speaking of complex, we're going to take complex sentences to the next level today. We're going to go over adjective and noun clauses. Let's get started. So here we are, grammar. Remember, grammar is about proofreading. It's about going back and editing your article. So we have a lot of steps for proofreading. First, be more concise. We already learned about that. Last time we learned about adverb clauses, and now we're taking it to the next level. We're going to learn about the two other types of dependent clauses that are going to have you making all kinds of variety with your complex sentences. So remember, there's three types of complex sentences because there's three types of dependent clauses. There's adverb clauses, adjective clauses, and noun clauses. Today, we're going to be going over adjective and noun clauses. Just a little bit of a reminder because this can be very difficult if you have not learned about clauses before. A clause is a group of words with a subject and verb. The reason we learn about clauses specifically is because they are the building blocks of sentences. So we have to know how little clauses work so that we can put them together to make more interesting kinds of sentences. Now, if you remember, we went over a little table last time. There's three types of sentences in our language. We have simple sentence, the compound sentence, and the complex sentence. A simple sentence is one independent clause. A compound sentence is two independent clauses. And a complex sentence is an independent clause and a dependent clause, meaning there's going to be a clause that requires you to have a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun in order to make it. So let's go ahead and read these examples. The simple sentence, I love cookies, it's just one independent clause, one sentence. The compound sentence, I love cookies and my sister made me some. This is still one sentence, but we have two separate clauses with two separate subjects and two separate verbs. Compound sentences are combined by fanboys. A complex sentence, since I love cookies, my sister made me some. There's a little bit more of a relationship going on, a more complex cause and effect kind of relationship going on here, since I love cookies. So that is an example of a complex sentence with a dependent clause. Okay, that is all to say that we have three types of dependent clauses. So anytime you make a complex sentence, you're either making an adverb clause, an adjective clause, or a noun clause with an extra S on the end. That should be deleted. Noun clauses. So last time we went over adverb clauses. So today we're doing adjective and noun clauses. So let's dive right in. An adjective clause. What does an adjective do? Think about it. What does an adjective do? Well, an adjective describes a noun. So, what does an adjective clause do? Well, it describes a noun in the independent clause. So you have a sentence, you have a clause, and if you want to add something to it to make it more complex, you can take any noun in that sentence and put another clause after it. Let's take a look at some examples. There's a magic rule for creating adjective clauses. Number one, it must come after a noun. It must come after a noun and it's going to be describing that noun. And it must begin with something called a relative pronoun. I've done all the examples of relative pronouns here. Who, which, that, whom, whose, when, and where. Let's take a look at some examples here. Number one, I hate the boy who bullies other kids. I hate the boy who bullies other kids. What's going on here? Well, we have an independent clause, I hate the boy. That's an independent clause. It can stand on its own. But this person wanted to add more information. They wanted to tell you what boy, which boy that they hate. And so they wanted to give you more information. So in order to do that, since boy is a noun, you're going to have to use an adjective clause because an adjective clause is going to give us the power to describe that noun. And the reason it has a pronoun is because the pronoun is replacing the noun boy, so you don't have to say boy again. I hate the boy who bullies other kids. Why don't we just say, I hate the boy who bullies other kids? The reason we have pronouns is so we don't have to repeat the boy, the boy, the boy. It makes our language more fun, less repetitive, more flowy. So, who comes after the noun of the independent clause, and it has its own verb. Who bullies other kids? So in each clause, in the independent clause, you have the subject verb, I hate. And in the adjective clause, you have another subject and verb, who is the subject, and bullies is the verb. Remember, if you're trying to see whether you actually made an adjective clause or not, or any dependent clause, you have to see if there's a subject and verb in it to confirm. Number two, which. The science project, which got the most attention, was the solar powered rocket. So if you didn't have this, which got the most attention, that'd be okay because the science project was the solar powered rocket is an independent clause that can stand on its own. But you wanted to tell us which science project. So you added which. And remember, which is a pronoun referring to science project. So in the independent clause, you have a subject and verb. Science project was. And in the adjective clause, you also have a subject and verb, which got. That's how you can confirm whether you actually used a clause or not. The river that runs through Egypt is called the Nile. Notice how each one of these adjective phrases comes after the noun that it's trying to describe. Which river? Which science project? Which boy? The teacher, whom I adore the most, is Miss Linnea. If you don't know how to use who, the difference between who and whom, that's something you should probably look up. I'm not going to teach it to you right now, but that's just something that's really easy to learn. Ask Chat GPT or go to Google. The teacher, whom I adore the most, is Miss Linnea. Whom I adore the most is referring to the teacher. Alexander Hamilton, whose ideas changed the course of the United States economy, wasn't even born in the country. So whose ideas changed the course of the United States economy is referring to Alexander Hamilton. It's describing the noun of Alexander Hamilton. Spring, when all the flowers start to bloom, is my favorite season. Notice if you use when, the noun that you're referring to has to be a time period. If you use where, the noun that you're referring to has to be a place. Tickets to Disneyland, where I go for every birthday, have become more expensive. You probably use adjective clauses. Maybe you didn't know that you use them, but the reason for being conscious of when you use them is that you can add a lot of variety and description and detail to your sentences. Notice how each of these, if you just took the independent clause, for example, for when, spring is my favorite season. If you just said spring is my favorite season, that's fine. But if you want to make your writing more vibrant, you're going to need to add more detail, perhaps even more imagery. And a lot of adjective clauses, they can either add information, they could add imagery. Spring, when all the flowers start to bloom, is my favorite season. That way your writing becomes more personal and stylistic. If you're wondering how to get more style in your writing, an adjective clause helps to show the reader what you think about that noun, and that adds more style. Well, that was fast. I think adjective clauses are really easy because they have to come after a noun. So it's just a lot more obvious. Noun clauses are really, really cool. Now, what you're thinking is, wait, but didn't the adjective clause describe a noun? Okay, but noun clauses are different. An adjective clause describes a noun, meaning it comes after the noun, but a noun clause acts like a noun. So that means that it replaces a noun in the independent clause. It replaces a noun. That's very interesting. Let's take a look how we do it. So if a noun clause is going to replace a whole noun, then a noun clause can show up anywhere in the sentence, anywhere in the independent clause where a noun could show up. And there's a bunch of places where you can have a noun in the sentence. You can have it as the subject of the sentence. I love cookies. Um, I being the subject. You can have it as a subject complement, which comes after a linking verb. I am a teacher. Teacher being subject complement. Direct object comes after an action verb. Indirect object is the person who receives a direct object. And object of a preposition comes after a preposition. For example, under the table. So anyway, table is object of preposition. Anyway, a noun clause can show up anywhere you have a noun in the sentence, any of these places in the independent clause. And then the other rule is it has to begin with a pronoun. Here are some examples. There's more on the next page, but here's just a few. How, why, that, and what. So let's see how it works. First, I'm going to start with this example here in the third row. How I got an A on that math test is a mystery to me. How I got an A on that math test is a mystery to me. What is going on here? We have this complex sentence. We have an independent clause and a dependent clause, but how are they working? Well, think about how this blank space in the first part, in the first bullet point here, this is where a subject would go. Remember, a subject is where a noun can be in the sentence. So blank is a mystery to me. So now we just have to fill in the subject with a noun clause. And you know that something can be a noun clause if it can be replaced with the word what. What is a mystery to me? How I got an A on that math test is a mystery to me. Okay, let's try the next one. Why? Blank confuses most people. What confuses most people? Why some people still smoke cigarettes confuses most people. So we have the pronoun why is going to initiate the noun clause. In the whole noun clause, why some people still smoke cigarettes is going to be the whole subject. It's going to replace the entire subject. And so you have this noun clause that has a subject and a verb. The subject is some people, and the verb is still smoke. And then the noun clause, the independent clause, also has a subject and verb. The subject being this whole noun clause, and the verb being confuses. Let's keep going. What about the pronoun that? Blank is an obvious fact. What is an obvious fact? That dogs are better than cats is an obvious fact. Maybe you guys might not find that a fact. I find it a fact. Next one. What? Blank will shock you. What will shock you? What I learned in class today will shock you. Are you guys starting to get the understanding of how noun clauses work? Let's keep going. Anything that ends with ever, whoever, whatever, wherever, however, whenever, those all work too. Let's take a look here. Blank wins $1 million. Who or what wins $1 million? Whoever survives 100 days alone in the wilderness wins $1 million. That's actually a real TV show called Alone on Netflix if you want to go check it out. What about whatever? Blank is okay with me. What is okay with me? Whatever you want to do is okay with me. Wherever. Blank should be a place that everyone agrees on. What should be a place that everyone agrees on? Wherever we eat for dinner should be a place that everyone agrees on. Now you'll notice in both of these pages, in both of the examples, I only use noun clauses as the subject of the sentence because I just wanted to make it very simple. But the noun clause can really come anywhere. It can come anywhere. There could be a noun, so it can come after a verb as well. So, for example, I know why you were late. I know why you were late. So it usually will come after, if you're going to use it as a direct object, for example, like I just did, I know why you were late. It will come after the verb. But all the examples I showed you, it comes before the verb. I just wanted to make things simple for you as you are first learning about noun clauses. So I have a little quiz for us. Are you ready? You have to determine whether the clauses that I provide to you in a complex sentence are adverb, adjective, or noun clauses. Just want to give you one little hint. Remember, an adverb clause acts like an adverb, meaning it is going to be describing a verb from the independent clause, and it has a cause and effect relationship. Adjective clauses act like an adjective, meaning they describe a noun in the independent clause, and noun clauses acts like a noun, meaning they replace a noun in the independent clause. Let's see how we're going to do on this quiz. Is it an adverb, adjective, or noun clause? Why she left the party early, I will never understand. Why she left the party early, I'll never understand. What do you guys think? I'll give you a second. If you said noun clause, you were right. You were right because it is acting like a noun here. What will you never understand? Why she left the party early. It begins with a pronoun, which is what a noun clause requires, and it answers the question, what will I never understand? Number two, the book that I borrowed from the library is due next week. I'll give you a second to think about it. The book that I borrowed from the library is due next week. If you said adjective clause, you were absolutely right because it comes after a noun, book, and it describes that noun, and it has a relative pronoun. Last one. If the rain stops, we will go for a walk. If the rain stops, we will go for a walk. I'll give you a second to think about it. If you said adverb clause, you're absolutely right because it's like a cause and effect relationship. It's modifying the verb will go. What determines whether you're going to go or not is if the rain stops. So if the rain stops is being modified, is modifying the word go. And it starts with a subordinating conjunction, which is what begins an adverb clause. So what's your job this week? Just like we did with adverb clauses, your job this week is to edit your article or whatever creative work you're working on now by adding 1 to 2 adjective clauses and noun clauses in each paragraph if they aren't there already. I hope you guys have fun with the variety of different clauses that you have. Think of it as tools in your toolbox now that you can use anytime to add more style to your writing. Okay, leading teen writers, remember that learning grammar doesn't have to be boring. If you think about how it will motivate you to develop your own style, to learn the craft of writing, then maybe grammar doesn't have to be so tedious and boring. So remember, go and add those adjective clauses, adverb clauses, noun clauses to your writing and add a lot more to your style and flow to your paragraphs. And always let us know if you guys have any questions. Bye.